Today is the 12th day of May in 2023, and we welcome you once again to our Chapter 49 podcast. My name is Larry Lannan. I'm a retiree, and I handle communications for Chapter 49, which for the most part is this podcast. We're happy that you have chosen to spend a little time with us today. It's always good to spend time with Duncan Giles, our Chapter 49 president. Welcome back, Duncan.
Thanks, Larry. It's always good to be here.
And it's kind of feel like it's actually spring. You know, when you get to the middle of May, that's when in Indiana you tend to have fewer colder days. And in central Indiana, that seems to be the case. And we hope that weather is nice wherever people may be watching or listening. So we have a lot to talk about today. So we'll just jump right into what we have to say. We don't have any big like breaking news, like, you know, discussions with the commissioner. By the way, have we heard from the commissioner on our offer to be on the podcast?
He turned it over to the director of communications, who's known me and known of me for a long time. So I'm expecting a very rapid response on that they're going to be eagerly awaiting, us to set it up for them.
So your relationship with the commissioner's staff is not always the best, is that what you're telling me?
I don't know. Some of them, for whatever reason, some of them seem to think that I'm a little bit of a smart aleck. I don't understand that myself, but
where that came,
what it is.
Yeah, where that came from, I have no idea, right, Duncan? I've only known you for several years.
Actually, the invitation was relayed. The commissioner was very gracious in his response, and I do have a little bit of hope, not much, but a little bit of hope that they will allow him to join us on the podcast, because I think it'd be good for everyone to hear from him.
Well, we'll wait for the official response. We have none yet, but we just wanted to update people on that. Let's move into our subjects for this week. When I was a manager, I recall when I would talk to my other managers, every now and then the issue of self-assessments came up. Now, self-assessments have, for employees and their reviews, annual reviews, that's been in this national agreement contract for a very long time. Employees are entitled to time on the clock to sit down and write them, and they can be submitted to your manager for consideration when your evaluation time comes up. I know whenever I would submit one, the manager I had at the time appreciated that, would incorporate some of my remarks into the annual appraisal narrative. So self-assessments have been around for a while, and I have always found that when I was a manager, my sisters and brothers in the frontline management world had various views of it. I always liked to get them, always read them carefully, and took that into consideration every time I looked at their annual appraisal. I'm kind of curious, Duncan, where do you think managers, employees are right now? Are people using self-assessments? And if so, do you think management officials are taking them into consideration the way they should?
To answer your second question first, I really don't think they do. You described how it should be done perfectly. You know, take a look at it. If need be, incorporate some of it. But there's something that should be looked at. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of the managers who get these self-assessments put in that type of effort for whatever reason. There's a myriad of reasons that they may not. The thing that gets me is, like you said, self-assessments are there in the agreement. You get time on the clock to do them. You just need to let management know in your last month of your rating period that you want to do a self-assessment, so it can be submitted before your annual appraisal is done. Nobody knows the work that you do better than you do. Your manager may be taking a look, they may be into your cases, taking a look at this and that, but they don't know day in, day out the type of work that you're doing. Only you know that, and only you can describe that. And a self-assessment is a perfect vehicle to be able to do that to your critical job elements, to help make sure your either score is raised or keep it at the level that it's at.
I have one question, and I really do. Just mostly, our audience would be employees, bargaining unit employees. Let's say, excuse me, you are a bargaining unit employee. You do submit your self-assessment. and your immediate manager chooses to ignore your self-assessment. What does the employee do?
And that's part of the great thing about it. One of the first things we do when we have employees come to us and say, I don't like my appraisal, I want to grieve it. Did you submit a self-assessment? The vast majority of the time, the answer is no. If the answer is yes, it makes our jobs a lot easier. Take a look at that. Take a look at the self-assessment. Take a look at the appraisal. Then you can go into the manager and, basically try and solve it informally going, did you take a look at the self-assessment? Did you consider these points A, B, and C that the employee made? And many times we've had success if somebody has done a self-assessment where a manager said, I didn't look closely enough at that, let me take another look at this, then we'll go ahead and raise it. If they don't want to do that, it really helps in the grievance process to have every level of management know that the employee did what they could to make sure that their rating was a fair reflection on their work by doing the self-assessment. So that's why I urge everyone to do a self-assessment. I just think it's the best thing you can do for yourself and your career.
And one last question on this, and I think this is something that a lot of employees probably think about. All right, I'm sitting down and I'm preparing to write my self-assessment. How do I go about doing that? What do I include? How do I go about writing it? What advice would you give?
There are a couple of guides out there, very good guides on self-assessments, and basically you want to write it to your critical job elements. What do your critical job elements say? You go and look for examples of the work that you do consistently for those job elements and list examples. So it doesn't have to be a book. It doesn't have to be super lengthy. Like I said, there are guides out there that can assist you with this on the IRS intranet. So, seek out those types of things and they will really help you with your self-assessment.
I think one thing that I would always advise people, and I'm curious what you think, is I would say, what you need to do for your self assessment is make notes. Excuse me, I'm sorry about this, a little allergies here. Make notes to yourself throughout your appraisal year. What have I done that maybe the manager didn't record or doesn't have a record of? What could I remind the manager of something that I have done? I think if you keep notes on that throughout your year, that makes your self-assessment a lot easier.
That is excellent advice because you're the one that, no manager is doing 100% a review on your cases, on your calls, on, if you're in the service centers, on the work you're doing there. They're not doing 100% reviews. Only you know what you're doing day to day. So by doing that note taking that you're able to refer to later on when you're doing your assessment, it makes it a heck of a lot easier for you.
I got a funny story to before we drop go to another subject, because I remember a revenue officer was always figuring out how to write up the report on his case when he would turn the case into his manager. And what he would do is he would look at his critical elements before he would do it, and he would address each one. And if it didn't apply, he would say this critical element did not apply in this case for the following reason. And I remember him telling me his manager came back to him and said, I wish you wouldn't do that, making her job harder to nick him.
Exactly.
So, I mean, sometimes
Exactly.
it's not a bad idea. And then you can use that as kind of a guide, as you said, to your self-assessment. So don't ignore self-assessments. They're extremely important. And some employees don't even know when their appraisal period is over. So make a note of that. When you're 30 days out, start to work on that self-assessment and contact your manager about when you can schedule time to work on your self-assessment. Moving on, something that I became very familiar with when I was working for the service. That's the VITA program. The VITA program is a volunteer tax program, where volunteers go out and prepare tax returns for low income and needy people. And sometimes just whoever walks in the door will just go ahead and do it if the return meets the guidelines set up by the service, because there's some limited scope. You can't necessarily do an alternative minimum tax on a volunteer program. But I think it's called the VITA program. It's volunteer work, but there are ways where you can, as an employee, go ahead and support the VITA program. And I have done instructions for VITA volunteers. That was one of the favorite things I ever did, was doing instruction, being an instructor for VITA volunteers. They're just such terrific people to volunteer their time. They come from a variety of backgrounds, but IRS employees can do this too. So talk about why that might be in the employee's interest to do that.
Yeah, it's something that, I was reminded by a longtime employee who's very passionate about the VITA sites, Kate McKnight, who we both know. And, it's something that you don't really think about sometimes, which we should, because you get up to 8 hours of administrative time per year to do these types of things, VITA sites. And, you get training and things of that nature. And this is something that, would never hurt when you're doing, going back to our last topic, our self-assessment, or, putting on your resume if you're looking to move forward, how much you're trying to do for the service. You're volunteering your own time, and it can be as much or as little as you choose. Someone like, if you're in the state of Indiana, someone like Kate McKnight can get you in with a group that can help you. If you are outside of the state of Indiana, then you can either contact Kate and she'll get to the right person, or you can contact your local folks who do this type of work, and they'll be happy, more than happy, the folks in spec, to be able to get you to the proper people so you can get some training and can take that time to assist taxpayers, because that's what we're all here to do, one way or another, for the service, either directly or indirectly. We're not here to get rich. Nobody is here working for the IRS to get rich. We're all providing services to the taxpayer. And, if you want to go that one step further, this is an awesome way to do it. And you get some time to do it as well.
So wait a minute, we're not trying to get rich?
Yeah, for some reason, I came into it thinking I could become a millionaire, but, I've never seen Regis Philbin around here saying, okay, is that your final answer? So I guess we're in here for the public service and not for the money.
Yeah, my final answer is I'm never getting rich as a federal employee or any really public service employee. Even our executives, if you look at what they make, I mean, what they make is a small fraction of what executives in the private sector can make. So I think
from the commissioner on down.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that you have to have some desire for public service, desire to be part of something bigger than yourself. That's always been the case. And through the VITA program, you could certainly do that. Yes, Kate McKnight is a wonderful lady, and she will certainly set you up. If you'd like to help VITA, she'll make sure she finds a way for you to do that. And as I said, I can think back. I traveled the state for a couple of years, doing VITA volunteer training classes. It's like a 3 or 4 day class. And the greatest joy I had meeting and talking to the people who are volunteers for that program, volunteering and donating their time. And you as an IRS employee can do that too. Okay, let's talk about something else, a little different subject this time. There's always been, ever since I have been with the service, and I won't say a dilemma, but certainly a discussion amongst managers at the high level and low level, and regular rank and file employees, about how much time they spend on their work. Two good examples would be on the toll-free system where you and I worked. There's something called average handle time. Translated, that means how much time are you spending with each customer? Some don't take much time at all. You give them a very quick, simple answer, and they're on their way. Others can take a very long time. There could be very complex issues, and to get that customer taken care of, you may take more time to do that. So we have average handle time, how much time you're spending with each customer. And in places like examination, collections, some other parts of the service, you have what's called time on case. How much time are you spending on each case? And there's sometimes pressures for people who are working these cases, the rank and file employees, to just get it done and move on to the next one, even though you may have a complex case that needs to be developed. Now, as I recall, this is kind of the service has kind of gone back and forth in my career, going all the way back to 1983. I can remember hearing from agents and what were then called tax auditors at that time about the time pressures they had on the cases they were working. And the average handle time didn't come till later when toll free became a much bigger operation. I'm curious about your thoughts. What are your thoughts about where these issues stand right now? How much time an employee needs to take to finish whatever particular job's in front of that employee?
Yeah, this is one of those things that can really tend to irritate me. And the reason it irritates me are the is things going forward as they should. Give you a couple of quick examples on average handle time. Average handle time was originally designed to be a forecasting tool. Period. End of story. A forecasting tool so that analysts at a national level could figure out, okay, how many calls are we going to be able to take per individual? Then it rolled into, okay, well, now we need to roll it down to the person, and your average handle time is high. I could, as someone who really has studied this, average handle time, time on a case, I could give a crap how long it takes. The important thing is a call being worked correctly? Is a case being done correctly? If there's good conversation control in the phone call and they're taking care of it and they're doing it properly, they're not, talking about 15 minutes on, the, NFL draft, then, that's not a problem. The call is going to take what the call is going to take. If you're in a case, a lot of times there are things outside of your control. You give the taxpayer or their representative deadlines, and surprise, surprise, sometimes they don't meet those deadlines. I know we're all shocked. So it adds time on the case. You do what you need to do to, further it along, whether you need to issue reports or, do levies if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. But it's just it should be just an indicator when you see these things. If something's being worked properly, it's going to take what it's going to take. And if it's not being worked properly, then the manager should be addressing why it's not being done properly, not the average handle time, not the time on case. It's like, what does the employee need? Do they need more training? Do they need more discussion on what they need to do to work a case or a call properly? That's what it should be showing. It should be an indicator. The old saying, and I can't remember which commissioner came up with this, let's get behind the numbers. And that goes back to possibly Rosati. So that would be the mid to late 90s, as long ago as that is. And that's something that we need to do instead of concentrating, okay, well, this call is taking too long. Can we drop our average handle time 3 seconds? Sure. I can get off the taxpayer, not do the proper things. And, we'll be more than happy to cut down on the time. I can get out of this case really quickly. I'll just survey it, or I'll just say, okay, they're currently not collectible, and boom, I'm in, I'm out. If you want me to turn around and turn over the cases, I can, but that's not being worked properly. Those things aren't being done, and that's not a service to the taxpayer either that we just talked about. So, for those managers who are using these as absolutes, they need to take a step back, and their bosses, the executives that are looking at this, need to realize that it needs to be done properly. Use it as an indicator, see where there's an issue is, get behind the numbers, and figure out how to help the individuals rather than just say, oh, your average handle time or your time on case is just too long.
I have to go back and show my age a little bit here, but there was an airline commercial that goes back many years, and it was about a group of GIs that had just were about ready to go on some little leave time, and they all crowded around a payphone, which already dates this commercial. So they're already crowded around this payphone, probably 20, 30 GIs, and they all are trying to get home. And so this airline employee gets the phone call from the first person, then they hand it off to the next. She talks to about 30 people and sets up their airline flights so they can all get home. So she gets off the phone call. Her manager walks by and says, "Okay, how many calls have you taken so far today?" She goes, "One." That's getting behind the numbers, because if you say one, how did you spend all this time on one? Well, I talked to 30 military members who were anxious to get home and I arranged their flights. Okay, that's getting behind the numbers. And I think that's what you're talking about.
That's a perfect example. And that's it exactly. So if, the managers are getting behind the numbers and having these discussions with the employees or listening to calls or reviewing the cases, then, when they're asked by those above them, why is this person doing this or that? They're doing everything correctly. It's just happened to be a dog of a case or a tough calls, bunch of tough calls, things of that nature, complex issues. And, they're fine. I mean, that's how it should work. And if the average handle time goes up or time on case goes up, so be it, as long as it's being worked properly.
Do you, without naming specifics, do you think there are examples in the service today where management officials up and down the line maybe are not handling this whole issue very well?
Yeah, some of it is not evil intent. It's just not really thinking, like a director in an accounts management site saying, okay, we're going to have a contest, and the group that lowers their average handle time the most is going to be rewarded with, a 15-minute admin coupon or something like that. Okay, basically you're sitting there saying, I don't really care, but quality is important. Okay, well, you just said that you want to lower the handle time, but quality is important. So you're not really caring about the quality because all you want is shorter phone calls. It sends bad messages. That's the key. It sends not only conflicting but bad messages to those types of things. So those are the types of stuff that we want to try and avoid, and we try and let management know this isn't the best way to do what they're intended.
Only in a place like IRS toll free would a 15-minute coupon to leave 15 minutes early at work be considered a major reward.
Yep, but it is.
I just had to mention that, and that is true. Let's move on. We've talked about this before. We need to emphasize it again. It's been getting a lot of general publicity, but it would have a specific impact on government employees, a very adverse impact, if the debt limit is not raised. We don't know for sure when that debt limit needs to be raised as far as a drop dead date. We think it'll be in June, but that's kind of been a moving target. Could be July. Strangely enough, Duncan, one indicator we don't have yet is how many estimated tax payments are going to come in as of that deadline. That will actually have an impact on how much time we have left on the debt limit. NTU National is strongly suggesting that our members and anyone that may be interested should immediately send a message to both senators and your member of Congress about this. Explain why this is so important.
Yeah, this is one of those things that, again, we've talked about the debt ceiling ad nauseum. I understand if people are sick of hearing about it. We're not happy talking about it because there shouldn't be an issue. This, again, is for bills that have been passed in the past. This is not talking about current things. So we need to pay the bills that we've passed. And by doing this, by hanging it up, we hit the debt ceiling. Are we going to be shut down? Are they going to call us into work and not pay us until later? How long is that going to be? What's going to happen to the government? What's going to happen to interest rates? They're estimating, Moody's, a analytical firm, has estimated that if there is a default, that could literally cost 1.8 million jobs in the United States. That's insane that we're playing chicken with those kind of numbers. So what we're hoping that you'll do is, for those of you out there seeing this, contact your congressperson, contact your senator. It's very easy to do. If you're an NTU member, you go off of the NTU website on your own time, on your own equipment. You can do it off your phone. and you can, they have pre-programmed letters that you can change and edit to your satisfaction to let them know that you want to get this settled. And, because this could have a direct impact on your pocketbook, directly and indirectly. And we don't want to see that for anybody. So that's why we're continually harping on this and letting you know what the possible impact is.
Just a quick note about how important this is. Back in 2011, that's the last time there was a close call on a debt limit. It finally was raised at the last minute. But because of that being the last minute thing, S&P, Standard & Poor, lowered the credit rating of the federal government, something that no one ever thought would happen. That was 2011. We're in 2023. S&P has not raised that rating ever since because of this political impasse we're in. So we pay a price for some of these political arguments that we have. Quickly, NTU does have a contract with a group called Becker Professional Certifications. They give you CPE continuing education to get certifications. Explain how NTEU members can take advantage of this contract.
Yeah, this is one of those things. There are many folks that we have that are CPAs that need to have continuing education each year to keep up their CPA license. And Becker is one of those that will have these programs that you can get a discount for to continue your CPE, but they also have many other certifications. And when we send this podcast out, I'm going to be sending out the information from Becker. So if somebody wants to take a look at this, they can and figure out, okay, this might be something that could help me. I could use a discount on this, or, this might be of interest to me to get a certification in this particular program. They've really varied it over the last several years into what different things that they're taking a dive into. So I think it's something that is worthwhile for employees that are looking for things like this.
So in the past, Becker has always been known as getting continuing professional education for revenue agents or CPAs. But what you're saying is there are more certifications out there, and NTU is offering a discount if you wish to do that, and you'll be sending more information out with details. Okay.
That is correct.
Okay, Duncan, your final comment for this podcast.
Yeah, my final is, I'm one of those, again, you've heard me talk about work-life things. I did something last night, for my partner, and just to see the look on her face when I told her what I had done. And, it's something that she's been a fan of, but never have gone to this particular thing in person. The look on her face was just priceless, because she was I was over there just smiling away and smirking and getting out my credit card and paying for something. And she's just like, what are you doing over there? What are you doing? And so when I finally told her, it was just like, wow, that is just so awesome. So, my thing is, the people that are in your life that you love, treat them well, do things for them. It doesn't have to be expensive. It can be little things. But, if you're doing these types of things for them, it shows how much they're appreciated, how much they're loved, and everybody needs that. So that would be my thought for this week.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly that my wife and I just celebrated our 32nd wedding anniversary. And all I can say is she deserves an award just for putting up with me for 32 years. So that's what I'll say about that. My final comment, though, really has to do with retirees. I am a retiree, have been for about 11 years. And when I retired, as a manager, I was about 6 years as a manager at the end of my 28-year federal employee career. And I went back and said, I'd be more than happy to come back and do some work. I know there are adjustments on my annuity that have to be made, but I would still be willing to come in, do some work, even though in the end I wouldn't be making that much, just to kind of mentor new managers, do some help there. And the answer came back as, well, we'd love to do that, but sorry, we don't have any money. We just can't afford to do it. So thanks, but no thanks. I've seen a lot written recently, and this is not just IRS, but the entire federal workforce and a group of retirees, that there has been a new push to say, hey, we have a lot of expertise and talent out there right now with people who are retired. I always give the example of my father. My father worked for the Defense Department for about 40 years. It was most of his working life. And he had a pretty stressful, difficult job with the Department of Defense. When he retired, a much younger lady took over her job. After having it for 6 months, and this is no lie, this actually happened. This poor woman had a nervous breakdown. She really couldn't handle the job. The job had so much pressure on it. And they came back to my dad saying, well, you think you might want to come back part-time? So he looked at it and said, well, I'll come in about 4 hours a day, but don't put any pressure on me. I'll be glad to help. I'll be glad to do this, but I'm not going to deal with all this pressure. And that lasted for about 2 years. He just worked like 4 hours in the mornings, had the afternoons to himself. And I think he made quite a contribution to the Department of Defense with his expertise. Now, about 2 years of doing it, the pressure started coming on. He said, thanks, but no thanks. And he walked out. I do think that retirees have a lot to offer, and I would hope now that the service has a budget where they can work on programs like this, not necessarily for myself. I'm kind of too far away from it now, but I'm hoping that all the people who are set to retire, and there are many of them who are just retired, might be tapped to do some good work. That could be in the bargaining unit, that could be in management. So, Duncan, do you think there's possibly something there?
I would hope so. Because I think that that's, people who have a lot of experience are a wonderful resource. The phased retirement program that's out there that basically says, okay, in your last couple of years, if you want to do this, you can, and then basically your thing is you're going to be mentoring people. So that's what it's for. Has been grossly underutilized. It's been darn near criminal. And
Well,
because the people like yourself and others who have the experience can help people. Like your dad's coming back and your dad said, yeah, I can help out. No, we don't need you. We don't have the budget for it. Okay. And then you have a nervous breakdown with somebody who's, it's like, I can't believe this person did the job.
well, and I think that what I would say is that retirees have the potential to contribute more than people think off the top of their head. So thanks for that comment. And you just heard Duncan Giles, chapter president for NTEU chapter 49, representing most IRS employees in the state of Indiana. I'll repeat what I said earlier in the podcast. We very much appreciate the fact that you have taken time to spend some time with us. We've seen our numbers have grown in recent weeks and months. There are people watching and listening all around the country, and a handful around the world. I'm not sure what they get out of this, but we're happy to have them. But we do want to let you know that you can always contact Duncan Giles with any kind of comment or question you might have. Just go to our email address, nteu49@aol.com. And you can also request that Duncan be put you on a list for every time we have a new podcast. He sends out an email with a link both to our audio and video podcast, whichever one you might choose to deal with. So again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And please be safe and be kind.